HR professionals need to understand recent changes to executive compensation risk assessments because they can play a vital role to the financial future of a company, according to Paul Gryglewicz, managing partner at Global Governance Advisors. Paul sat down with Canadian HR Reporter TV to talk about what HR professionals need to know about executive compensation risk assessments.
Executive compensation risk is about understanding the business and its risk appetite, and then analyzing the compensation platform as it relates to executive pay to determine if it's indeed appropriate given the nature of the business.
What types of businesses should be conducting these reviews?
There are a requirement for companies that are traded in the capital markets in Canada to disclose in their proxy circular that have they considered compensation risk reviews. The framework and of which the approach of how organizations actually analyze that has not been provided.
How has compensation risk developed in recent years?
The financial crisis really helped us identify the practice of doing a compensation risk review. The Financial Stability Board, which was a conglomerate of banking executives who came together on a global basis to determine the best and most responsible practices to executive compensation. And the regulators initially in Canada had adopted that for the Canadian banks. And now that practice of compensation risk reviews has not become as framed as that initial document. But we've used that as a guideline to create the framework in order to actually analyze compensation risk reviews independently for a board of directors.
Are there any compensation trends HR professionals should know about?
I'd say that the trends are really around, how do we reward executives fairly and still create the opportunities for, a competitive payout, but the method of which they achieve that payout has changed. Traditionally, if we look back, it was always potentially stock options in an executive compensation platform that created the windfall. Then we saw a movement and a push to not use stock option, but then to use restricted share units, or these full value units that map the full value of the share. And that created a different set of outcomes for compensation. And in today's world, when we look at the practice of executive pay, we're seeing the larger issuers and even medium-sized companies using multiple forms of long-term incentive to create the overall payout scheme. Today's practice, executive compensation, we see organizations use more than one form of long-term incentive. So if the overall opportunity for a CEO is, for example, $1 million, we might see 50% of that $1 million opportunity be granted in the form of stock options, and the other 50% being used in the form of restricted share units.